But I took the responsibility of being the quarterback. I took the responsibility of trying to win the division, because when I was younger, I didn't see us do that much. Being a little boy growing up and watching those type of rivalries, and then be the guy leading your team. I mean, words can't describe how blessed and honored I am to have that. It really was an emotionally cool year. It was really something that was special, and the fans appreciated that even in the loss.
Hello again, and welcome to another installment of Club 46, driven by Bridgestone, where each week we sit down with an all-time Cleveland Brown great. And this week, we are thrilled to be joined by number 19, Bernie Kosar. Bernie, you look great. How you feeling?
Feeling good, young man. Thank you, Jake. Good to be with you.
Very good. I want to dive right into this. I don't even want to mess around with the small stuff. When you're asked by folks that aren't Clevelanders to characterize your time as a Cleveland Brown, how do you look back on that now?
I definitely look back on it being highly humbled, incredibly honored. I mean, still almost a dream state, to grow up in Youngstown, Ohio.
Even now?
Even now, as you get older, you really do still reflect like that. I'm not saying that to be cool or over-dramatic or emotional, although as we get older, I think we do get more emotional with it. But again, to be a little boy growing up here, the Steelers, we were 0-16. The Jinx in Three Rivers Stadium, the AFC Central, Paul Brown and the Art Modell issues and legacy, and for Paul Brown to be with the Cincinnati Bengals, for Chuck Noll to be the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Rooney family, and heck, Jerry Glanville and Warren Moon were down in Houston. To be able to play teams like that and in that black and blue division, and being a little boy growing up and watching those type of rivalries, and then be the guy leading your team. I mean, words can't describe how blessed and honored I am to have that.
All of us, when we're little boys in our backyard, we have those dream scenarios. When you were growing up in Boardman, did you pretend that you were the Cleveland Browns quarterback? Did you one day actually visualize being the quarterback of this tradition-rich franchise?
It's probably cliche to say, it's easy to say right now, but absolutely. I mean, as a boy in Youngstown, Ohio, half the city's for Pittsburgh, half the city's for Cleveland. My father and my grandfather were big Cleveland Browns fans, and they used to say this growing up every year. If we lost every game we played, but we beat the Steelers twice, it was a positive season. Well, every year as a little boy, we would always lose in Three Rivers Stadium, and the Steelers had those dynasties of the 70s. So it almost was that unrealistic goal that you could win at Three Rivers. So for me to be able to have that as a focal point and to have those victories there was special.
Do you have a single favorite memory wearing that orange helmet?
I think a lot of guys, there's a lot of games. Fortunately, my memory's still good that you could remember a lot of them. And I think again, not to sound cocky, but I've really been so blessed that there isn't probably any one game or any one play, because there's been so many of them. There's been so many amazing games. But Ozzie Newsome used to say this, and it was something that really resonated with me. And I know we have the new stadium, and it's beautiful. But the old stadium, yes, we call it beautiful, but it was beautifully ugly. And it
personified Cleveland, really.
It really personified the team. It personified the stage of our city at the time, and the stage of football at the time. And it wasn't aesthetically pleasing. And when you came out through the old baseball dugouts, the fans didn't know you were coming. And when that first orange helmet hit the dugout, and that roar of the 80,000 people, that roar was deafening. But from that point forward, after hearing that noise, the focus, the intensity to win, that laser drive just to get a W really blocked everything out.
Did you not hear the fans when you were playing?
And from that point forward, the fans, there was nothing that got in the way of what was happening in that rectangle.
I understand that you played in so many big games. There's so many big moments when you were leading this franchise. and I understand the difficulty in picking that one. But if I asked you that you were going to be responsible to pick one highlight of your career to put into a video vault that generations from now we can show your great-grandkids, this is what great-grandpa Bernie was all about, what single play would that be?
You know, the collaboration of plays was so much fun for me, and Gary Danielson was amazing with me, for me in my transition and into the league and in playing successful football and anything in successful life with that. And for us, I remember in 1986 coming up with the clock play, the spike play, which now is a commonplace play to everybody, but nobody had ever thought about it. Everybody had just used it as a throwaway play, and it was more of a philosophical way that we got about that, because I didn't like to waste plays. I didn't like to take plays off. So when me and Gary came up with that play, we maximized the use of it, and we actually used it. Dan Marino and me used it with the Dolphins in the mid-'90s with Coach Shula, but we actually used it in the Jets double overtime game in 1986. And there's other components to that play that weren't as sexy as the outcome against the Jets 9 years later.
Right.
But things like that, concepts like that, collaborations like that, that really have defined and changed the game. I know we came up with that play, and now to see other teams and basically
It's part of the game now.
it's part of every team's game plan. Every defense coaches it, every offense coaches it from the high school level up. And again, to have those type of influences on 3 or 4 different types of conceptual plays is just really special to me.
You've always been the cerebral guy, the thinking man's quarterback. Is that because your physical limitations and because maybe you weren't the prototypical pro-style, beautiful delivery passer? Did you make a conscious decision that I've got to be that guy to make a career in the NFL?
Excellent point. It's absolutely a key component of how I play football and really how I live life. We could talk about what we don't have. We could talk about all the mistakes and the negative things. I like to think about what I do have and what I do good. I was incredibly slow. I wasn't very strong. So I had to take advantage of the cerebral side of it, the X's and O's, the chess match side of it. And I was so blessed to have a coach like Howard Schnellenberger early in my career, Mark Trestman, Jimmy Johnson, Gary Danielson, although he's a teammate and friend, his level of knowledge, even to this day, is just gave me such an amazing start from an early point in my career.
What was it like being not just a Cleveland Brown in the late 80s and early 90s when this city was Browns crazy? What was it like being Bernie Kosar in this city during that time?
I'm blessed, and I'm absolutely not complaining because I do love the love and respect that everybody had for it. But I took the responsibility of being the quarterback. I took the responsibility of trying to win the division, because when I was younger, I didn't see us do that much. So I took that responsibility as almost an obsessive goal, an obsessive responsibility, and that was all I tried to focus on. And that aspect of it didn't really lend itself much for me to have a lot of time to be out there really paying attention to what was going on, because I had a really singular focus of what was going to go on in my huddle within that rectangle.
You were all about the game, weren't you?
It was all about what was going to happen on Sunday. I mean, it was 16 beautiful chances to go out there. Again, we started out the interview talking about, what do you want as a little boy? I mean, I haven't had to grow up. I've got to be a quarterback and play in an amazing sport with a game, with a bunch of my friends out there. It's absolutely something that I'm blessed to do.
When you weren't doing football stuff, but hanging with the guys, who were your guys? Who was your crew when you played with the Browns?
Well, again, the great thing about it was probably all of us are hanging out. I mean, we still today, we joke around with K-Mac, Ernest Biner, Met, Webb, Lange. I mean, I almost don't want to name
most of the offensive guys, right?
Yeah, I don't want to name all the guys, because I'm going to leave some out. But I mean, heck no. And you go with Hanford and Minnie and and Clay.
Did you have
and
a guy you considered to be your best friend?
Well, no, you hang out with guys, and unfortunately, there's all the guys I just named. There's Gary Danielson, I've named multiple times. Paul Farron is my roommate. Heck, so many things happen special that we're brothers to this day, and the bond and relationships that you have. I mean, I was blessed to play almost 9 years here in Cleveland. The average career is 3.41 years right now. So you tend to have lots of relationships through the course of your almost 9 years here, 12 years in the NFL. So each year is a year onto itself, and you try to live. And even now, I try to tell the younger players and even my kids, live for today, do the best you can today, get the most out of it tomorrow. But that relationship with the guys, with the offensive linemen, the camaraderie that we had. I mean, Paul Farron, our centers. Heck, we used to go out, do lineman nights with the whole team and end up with 50 guys at Fridays in Great Northern Mall. And it's funny is people used to say we were winning so many games back then that we got free drinks and free food everywhere because everybody loved us. And that's absolutely not true. Nobody paid for anything. I got every bill, okay? That was
the quarterback always pays. Come on.
But all the establishments that said they took care of us, they did not.
You paid for plenty of tabs.
They padded the tabs.
Bernie, let's go way back to growing up in Boardman. What was life like for you as a young kid?
It's been a lot talked about. Times are different back then as they were today. So some of the things that happened to me back then that maybe I would say, people would say, oh, that was challenging or tough or poor me. I don't look at it like that. I think I had a great childhood growing up. Were there fighting going on? Was there a little physical contact? Absolutely. Those are the signs of the times back then. And it's actually part of what really toughened me up to be able to withstand what I'm going through now. I mean, to play as many years as we've had, to have 35 some surgeries, 70 some broken bones, you develop that aura of somewhat toughness from your youth. And I'm really proud of, my family in Youngstown, Ohio. At times you don't like it, but you get tough. You toughen up growing up there.
Life in general in Youngstown could be tough.
Yeah, and especially in the 70s, and we were the bomb. Cleveland and Youngstown had some issues going on with the bomb capital of America. And,
sure.
And then you have to grow up kind of quick with those type of situations going on around you, and then go to the University of Miami, and right after Fidel Castro opened up the jails and they had the Mario boat lift down in South Florida. That was another really interesting growing up stage of your life that you either need to toughen up and grow up or you don't survive.
Were sports a big part of your life as a kid? Were you a big sports fan, big sports family?
Absolutely. Sports is the savior. I mean, growing up in Northeastern Ohio, growing up in Youngstown, it really helps define you. But it was the steel industry of the 70s. And the steel industry was closing down. There were really no manufacturing jobs in Youngstown, Ohio at that point. And really the only way to, I don't want to say get out, but the only really way to better yourself was through education and through sports. And we didn't have any money to continue education. So to do that, you had to get football scholarships. You had to get sports scholarships.
For you, that was really your life raft, wasn't it?
Sports. That was your chance out, yes.
Yeah.
That was your chance for your family's success.
You started when you were young as a baseball player. Dreams of being a big leaguer?
Hey, when you're young and in the future, you're not really sure of your dreams to be any type of big leaguer, pro football, pro hoops, pro baseball. But yeah, actually, I think growing up, I thought I was better in baseball. You play baseball more growing up, and actually, I didn't start playing football till 7th grade.
Right.
A lot of kids start earlier, so baseball was something that you started earlier and I had good success with.
When you decided to go at it and play football in the 7th grade, was there a point, Bernie, where you looked at the game and you said, I can be really good at this?
You know, when I started playing, again, this really sounds cocky, but probably most people who sit in this chair, most of the athletes who made it to the pro level can say this. You're just good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just throw. I mean, Dan Marino, one of the greatest throwers of all times. Love watching him throw. And me and him were of the same era where that's when we started doing OTAs and all the off-season conditioning and all the off-season throwing so that you got ready to throw. So you had perfect timing by training camp. And all these quarterbacks would come and they'd try and they'd throw all spring and all summer and they'd get to training camp. And Danny didn't throw that much because Danny could just said if he could just throw it, throw it. And he just beautifully could throw that
naturally.
ball. He just naturally could throw
do
it. And some of us aren't as natural as that, so we had to work a little harder.
So you're in high school and you're being recruited. I'm imagining at that point you're starting to realize that this is going to take you to the next level. What was the recruitment process like for you?
The recruitment process was, it was I guess nice at first seeing all those letters, but then it became too much. I mean, when you get hundreds and thousands of letters, would have loved to have gone to Ohio State, and it's taboo to saying here in Ohio, but or to Pitt. Growing up in Youngstown, Dan Marino was the quarterback at Pitt. He was going to be a senior when I would have been a freshman. I'd have got a chance to learn from him. Or, of course, any Ohio boy wants to go to Ohio State.
Did those schools not call?
Or a Catholic, I want to go to Notre Dame.
Right.
But basically, those schools didn't call. And I wasn't recruited by them. Wow. So it was the West Coast schools, California and Stanford, and the Florida schools, Florida State, Florida, and
Do you know why?
University of Miami.
Have you ever talked to anybody that was there
Yeah,
at the time?
yeah. If you think back, we're so old, but it wasn't the wishbone in the mid '80s in the Midwest and the Big Ten, but it was heavy, heavy running, and I've always been tall, slow, and skinny, so not very strong. So I was more into the throwing aspect, not the running side of it. So the Pac-10 or Pac-12
California and Florida
out
is where they were throwing.
And the Florida schools were throwing the ball.
Yeah. So did you have a choice of Florida schools, or was it always for you Miami?
Yeah, actually, the first time I got on a plane was to go to the University of Florida, and Mike Shanahan was the offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan's dad,
Yeah.
and he ended up being the offensive coordinator for John Elway and all those Denver games. But he was the first guy to recruit me to go down to the Gators, and that's taboo for a University of Miami to say.
It is.
And then once Howard Schnellenberger, I got a hold of him. He was he's an amazing special man, and what he taught me in terms of football was life-changing. But what he taught me in terms of being a man and life is just, I can't thank him enough.
I look back at those times, Bernie, they had some great quarterbacks already on the roster.
Oh yeah,
Were you concerned about, will I play here? How am I going to stand out from this crowd of really talented quarterbacks?
I was not at all concerned until I got there, and then they didn't have the internet back then, so I didn't really realize that Jim Kelly, Mark Richt, and this guy Vinny Testaverde, who went on to win the Heisman Trophy, and Kyle Vanderwyn were there, and these are all top-tier, eventually pro quarterbacks, and it's a great life lesson for me. I went to a couple days of practice. I ran a 5.5 40, had a $185, caved my chest in. Vinny threw up 325. Jim Kelly's a Hall of Famer. I actually considered transferring.
Did you really?
I went up to Coach Snellenberger a couple days later, and I said, doesn't look good for me. I'd like to play football. Looking at these other guys, it looks like I'll at best be a backup here. And he said, yeah, you're right. It doesn't look good for you. Not exactly.
How did you end up staying then?
It's not exactly what an 18-year-old freshman wants to hear.
Not comforting words.
But then he said, he said really defining words to me. And he said, it's anything in life that's great, everybody wants. So if you're going to run from a challenge now because you're afraid to compete, odds are you're going to be a quitter and you're going to run your whole life. And how defining was that? Because, I could have came back home. I could have played at another school, gave it a shot. He goes, he goes, you can go home, you can be a mommy's boy. Everyone will tell you it was wrong, you're okay. But you don't want to be, he goes, you don't want to be an old man like me. He goes, and have regrets. He goes, it's better to go for it, try and fail. Look yourself in the mirror and know you did the best you can. Then you can live with yourself. You don't want to look back with regrets. And I've lived my life like that since he's told me that advice.
Was that the defining moment of your life?
That was one of the most defining moments, absolutely.
So from there, you put your nose to the grindstone and you did work.
I went for it,
and
absolutely.
You rose up the ranks at Miami, and eventually you were there at a really exciting time because they obviously were becoming a national power. But in 1983, after losing the first game, you guys run off 11 straight and win a national championship. What was that time like in your life?
You know, it came at me. It came at us all pretty quick. Again, when you have great veteran leadership and mentors like Howard Snellenberger, Mark Trestman was on that team right there. Gary Stevens, a lifelong Clevelander, was our offensive coordinator. When you have mentors like that, and we had teammates back then, and those guys, heck, you see Alonzo Highsmith and me, we still travel with our fullbacks together. I mean, the quarterback, fullback, running back combination, it's been a lifelong thing for me on and off the field.
Wow. When you win it and you realize we are the national championship winner, what was that moment like?
You know, it was pretty surreal in terms of so much time went into that game. And I didn't look at it as an upset. I expected us to win. I go into every game expecting to win. It's not, they weren't upsets to me. And our goal was we were going to win a national championship that year. So it wasn't a surprise. It was just a matter of fact of, well, that was what I was supposed to do. And actually, in most of my career, I act like I've been there before. Coach Snellenberger said, act like you've been there before. Even though we hadn't been, obviously. But and as the leader, I tried to do that. So I tried to pretend I was cool on the outside. Of course, inside, you're really excited. And that type of leadership and that type of relationships, it's special.
You're done with your college career. You make the decision that you're going into the NFL. But you did it a little unconventionally. You decided that you were going to enter the supplemental draft. Take me through that decision.
That was a really interesting time for me from a more life lesson and a macro standpoint. Again, we had mentioned U.S. Steel and the steel mills in northeastern Ohio had closed down, so most of my family were steel workers, and it just wasn't materializing in terms of jobs and a lifestyle right back then. And then the University of Miami, we were really good and we were loaded. Coach Snellenberger had recruited a great amount of guys coming in. Jimmy Johnson was now our head coach, and Jimmy Johnson to play with him at the U, at the Cowboys, and then back with the Dolphins. We were going to be special, and I was really looking forward to doing that. So I really wasn't going to come out. And then the Vikings made a trade, and Bud Grant had my rights if I was going to come out. And I still wasn't going to come out, but Bud Grant, and I really had a lot of respect for Bud Grant, and they had a running back, Chuck Foreman, back then, who was from the U again, and who I was a fan of. And Bud Grant made a statement to me, and he said, I really love your loyalty, son. I really respect that. It's actually why I'm going to draft you. And I said, well, sir, I got 2 years left. I'm not leaving my brothers. I'm not leaving my friends and teammates at the U. And he goes, that's, again, why I love you. It's a commendable way of way I like my quarterbacks to think. But he goes, you got to remember this. God doesn't know how many hits you have in you and how many throws you have in you. And whether you make a throw in high school or college or in the street, that's one less throw you have the rest of your life. Wow. And at some point, you're going to get older, you're not going to be able to take hits, you're not going to be able to throw. Well, I was 19, 20 years old. I thought I was going to throw forever. I'm going to be able to take hits forever. You know, as Jay, as you and me sit here, and that's as straight as my right arm goes, that's not an excuse to show my, show my Super Bowl ring. But, to have, quite a few surgeries here, to have 35 some overall surgeries. I mean, Bud Grant was so right. But that, even though I kind of discounted that statement, it kind of resonated with me that, hey, maybe even though I do have 2 years of eligibility left, even though I did feel like I was leaving my brothers at the U, there was a responsibility to my family. You know, we weren't really making the type of opportunity that football would lend itself to.
So when you decided that you were going to go the supplemental draft route, were you thinking Cleveland the whole time?
I wasn't thinking the supplemental route. I was thinking the regular draft, and let's go for it and to see what happens. But then the opportunity of the supplemental draft came up. The rules and the commissioner and people back then, and Al Davis was making a move to make a trade for me. So lots of people got involved, and the Al Davis and the Raiders and the NFL back then were suing each other. So you know that was maybe not going to happen. So it just got the stuff. It was stuff that the 20-year-old was just over his head. I just wanted to play football and get my degree.
Right.
And sadly, in that order. Okay, I wanted to play football. Okay, and I loved playing football at the University of Miami in the Orange Bowl. So all that other stuff started to happen, and I just kind of stepped back from it. And the commissioner said, "Hey, you really have to graduate, and if you graduate, then you can go into supplemental draft." Well, back then. You were able to trade picks in the supplemental draft.
Right.
So before I accepted the commissioner's gracious offer, maybe did I tell Ernie Accorsi and Mr. Modell that I was going to accept the supplemental draft, and did they make probably a call to Mr. Wilson and the Buffalo Bills to execute that trade before I became available? That happened.
Yeah. So at that point, you're basically realizing a childhood dream coming true.
Yeah,
you're going to play for your hometown Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and then it happened again. You had to graduate. I was taking 18 hours of classes. Back then, there wasn't really the 20-hour rule and the restrictions on time requirements to practice. So there wasn't any time to really relax. And that was another great life lesson I learned then, was really the devil works with idle hands. And I was so busy. Even in a place like Miami, you really didn't have time to get in trouble, you know, and you got things done. Well, along those lines, now all of a sudden I've graduated real quick, and you're in training camp, and all of a sudden it's 7 weeks of training camp with Marty Schottenheimer and the Cleveland Browns in 1985, and you're right in the thick of it.
The era that you played in was more about results than measurables. All of these athletic measurables are such a big deal that we see at the Combine. If Bernie Kosar was coming out of Miami today, would you be the cornerstone of a draft?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But, you know, one of the things, again, there's younger people watching and families, and I'm not trying to say this to be, you know, over dramatic again, but the game was life and death. That was the first thing, and it literally was life and death. And as you get older, I know there's more to life than just the W of a football game, but it wasn't to me, and especially was not at that time. That was it, and that was the only way I was able to get those W's, was to have that complete commitment to the team and to getting that. So that type of mentality was essential for us, and I'm really proud of how our guys really took on that responsibility.
Yeah. Let's go back and talk about some individual games, because you can't talk about that era without those AFC Championship games. And I'll start, before we get to the first Denver game, one of the most memorable games as a fan for me was that Jets game, 8 days before the drive. It's a double overtime game. It lasted over 4 hours. I've watched that game back in its entirety, and it seems like it's taking course over taking course over 2 days. It's so long. What are your memories from that 86 game when you're down 20-13 with not a whole lot of time to go? You're down 10 with not a whole lot of time to go.
Well, Jay, we may have to go 2 days on this interview if you want to do all that. And this is probably bad for TV, but I carry this as I wear my Navy tie from our Secretary of the Navy, Thomas Modley. He gives me this pin of never give up the ship. All right?
Never give up the ship.
Never give up the ship.
And is that's basically, that's kind of.
I didn't have that obviously back at that time, but that bringing that out is probably horrible for TV, what I did, but it doesn't matter because that philosophical belief that I still carry with me to this day, I absolutely have when I play football. Okay, you never give up the ship, you never quit, and you never concede a loss. Never.
You believed in that moment at 20-10 with whatever 4 minutes to go that you guys were going to come back here?
Hell yes.
You did?
Yes, absolutely.
There were fans, Bernie, streaming out of the old stadium.
Yeah,
they had thought the season was over.
Yeah, they're bad. And again, I'm not saying that because it's after the fact. I did. And when you do genuinely believe that, it spreads the butterfly effect to the people around you. And that it was, and again, it starts stemming from things like, again, Coach Stellenberg, Coach Trestman, talking to me about, quitting earlier when I saw Jim Kelly's and Vinny Testaverde's and running from challenges, running from mistakes. I threw 2 picks to solidify that we were down 20-10, the 2 plays before that beautiful 4 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever it was. So, I don't want to sit and feel sorry for myself for almost screwing it up. You got to do something about it, and you never quit. And there's so many funny things in that game. I mean, that's actually the first time in 1986 we did the clock play.
Yeah.
We did it a couple times to get a field goal in the first half, and then did it at the end of the game. I shouldn't laugh about this, but that's one of the first times that I got knocked out unconscious on the field and lost a couple of my teeth in
Was
the
that the Gastineau hit?
That was the Gastineau hit in the fourth quarter, and I say this from a karma spirituality standpoint of it because earlier in that game, me and Mike Babb messed up a center exchange, and Kevin Mack jumped on it and he busted his teeth in the first quarter, and he lost his teeth. He had this stream of blood going down, and I love Kevin to death. He's one of the greatest guys in the world and an essential part of us, and I love him, but I had to tell a little fib to him because it was really bad and his teeth are falling out, and I told him, hey, Kev, he goes, how do I look? I go, you look great. Mike Babb was trying to tell him the truth, and I had to tell Babb to shut up.
Yeah, he doesn't need to know how bad it is.
No, but then Kevin, to show you what a gladiator he is, he played that whole game like that. I didn't wear a mouthpiece. That's why my teeth got knocked out, and I ended up swallowing them. But Kevin stayed in, and he kept his mouthpiece in the whole game to the point where probably too much information, but even showering after the game, the guy had his mouthpiece in because his teeth were going to fall out.
Wow, incredible.
But he made we made plays, and at the end of that game, even with some of the issues that myself and some of my teammates like Kevin had gone through, and somehow, some way, to be able to figure out a way to win. And again, I like to say that epitomizes, myself, but that really epitomizes that team and those guys.
Yeah.
And I love them to this day.
Do you have a favorite play from that game when you think back on it? There were so many exciting plays that last 4.5 minutes.
Again, it's such a blessing to have so many of them. It's, back then I did a lot of play calling, and then when I did the play calling, I would do a lot of play checking and checks off of it. And people would call it stealing signals in those days,
right.
In these days. And me and the coaches and Gary Danielson and Dan Fike, great guy, great lineman. We'd have time to spend during the game, and when you see coaches on the sidelines going 4-3 under cover 2. I mean, it's kind of hard not to look and know what they're doing. It's really their fault for being.
So were there times, Bernie, where you came to the line and you said, "I know what they're in here"?
Well, yes.
Even before you broke the huddle.
Well, no, you would confirm it because just like I would have fake signals myself, I would assume I'm not the only one.
You don't know if they're hot or dead.
So you would just acquire all the information you could acquire because giving fake signals is the essence of the game, too.
Sure.
I mean, I have one of the longest passes I had for a decade or so in Monday Night Football, Chicago Bears in 1989, playing Mike Ditka, and we're backed up on the 2.5 yard line. I don't like to run the ball backed up on the 1 or 2 yard line because typically the defense knows you're going to run the ball, so you get
Perfect time to throw.
So I tell the coaches get your 2nd and 10 play ready because the running play is typically not going to work. So I do like to throw it. So I did an audible where I told Webster, no matter what I say, you're going to run a takeoff. And my fist was a takeoff. Go do a bomb. But I'm going to yell slant. I'm going to tell you run a slant.
Right.
And the DB.
That's a deke. You're just faking the
Yeah,
defense.
but the defensive back, he's going to think we're stupid, and he's going to listen, and I'm going to subtly tell you slant, and you'll just run right by him. And things that simple actually work in the pros. And something like that could end up with, again, a 97, 98-yard touchdown pass that defines a game for you. And little tricks like that, little experienced things, are collaborative things, again, like Gary Danielson, I'm proud to have come up with that lots of people use now.
So the next week is the famous drive game. When you look back at that game, was there one play on that drive, and I know by now you've seen them all too many times to count, was there one play on that drive that particularly drives you nuts?
Not really nuts. You know what, I had this thing during the game. I didn't really pay attention to the other quarterbacks. That wasn't my problem. Yeah. You know, and it distracted me from my focus of I just had to worry about that defensive coordinator and the 11 guys that ended up in a defensive huddle. Mm-hmm. Anything else during that points of the game took me out of my distractions level, and I didn't allow the other guys in the huddle or in the offense. We stayed in our box. We stayed in our rectangle.
How were you watching the drive?
Well, and
on
then
the bench?
No,
Your huddle?
Coach Snellenberger taught me in college that his quarterbacks must always prepare for the worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. Always prepare for the worst case because anybody could do what's easy. So I had to prepare. The worst case scenario is he does the drive and scores. So I was ready, getting my 2-minute plays ready. Coach Reeves and Elway, very smart. They basically left no time on the clock and got it in. So I was then getting ready for overtime. The only time I actually did think I watched a play was I was standing next to Kevin Mack as he threw that touchdown on a slant, because you got to get up to see what's going on. But as the game ended, it's almost like I take a lot of pride when I go to another team stadium, okay? To go to Pittsburgh, to go play Chuck Noll and the Roonies, to go play Paul Brown and Cincinnati, okay, go play Jerry Glanville and Warren Moon in Houston. I take a lot of pride in going in there and then beating their ass and hearing a pin drop and not hearing anything. Unfortunately, my love for doing that to others came on to me that day, because as I walked off the field after that drive game, you could have heard a pin drop. You couldn't have heard. It was amazing how quiet it was. And then as a real tribute to our Cleveland fans, something that's never happened to me, and I've never seen happen. While I'm walking off the field, and you know, it's a miserable feeling, of course, and you're just reflecting on what you could have done, should have done, what could have happened. And then we've lost, and the fans give us a standing ovation. I mean, it's really amazing. To go from like hearing a pin drop to, you know, they got the fans standing up and applauding, because it really, again, I don't take consolation in losses, but it really was an emotionally cool year. It was really something that was special, and the fans appreciated that even in a loss.
How do you describe that love affair, Bernie, to those that don't understand it? The love affair between the city of Cleveland and its football team.
I think you said it really well, in that they don't understand it. You know, there's a bond, there's a camaraderie, there's a genuine love. Okay, people use the words I just used, but when it's genuinely there, and you genuinely care, and you genuinely want to make a difference, and you've been given some gifts that can make a difference in people's lives. I see that in so many people, and it's so proud to be part of the community that genuinely does that. And again, yeah, sports is an awesome part of it, but it's just a part of it. And to see the fans, their genuine love, their commitment, their passion, and really, since the team's come back, I'm not trying to cause issues here, but it's been a bad 20 years of football. Okay, there's been a million reasons why. Okay, and you go, but at the end of the day, the results are the results, and for them to be so passionate and so caring for just the team, but our area, that's what makes us special.
Do you miss that?
I think we still have that.
How long does it take to get over those losses? Do you ever get over those losses, the drive and the fumble?
Yeah, I don't know if you get over them. I think as you get older, you accept them. I think as in life, I really like to kind of see the positive sides of things. So I try to take out the positive stuff of it. Now, I don't take, again, consolations in losses, but I don't want to, as you get older, just eat yourself up from within, because you can't change what happened. But some of the life lessons that came out of it, some of the experiences, heck, some of the plays, some of the lessons of just not quitting. When we were down in a lot of those games, there's a lot of adverse things that happened that, again, it makes me proud to be part of really a war with my brothers out there.
Yeah. I want to talk about the end of your time here in Cleveland. It was a bizarre time. That was when the term diminishing skills came to be part of the Cleveland lexicon. What was that whole time like for you?
Well, first, this is partially why I'm doing holistic medicine now and feeling so good is, you get all those injuries. And at the time, nobody wants to admit you're hurt. But by definition, every day we're living, our skills are getting diminished.
We're all diminishing.
Yeah, so if you're playing pro football and you're taking the beating that I took and all those hits, by definition, your body is deteriorating.
Sure.
Did I think it had deteriorated to the point where I couldn't play? I knew I could still play, but I knew the time was coming within a couple years. I mean, again, we had said earlier, the average career is a little less than 3.5 years. I played 12. I was in my 9th year then. The thing that was tricky with it then was we were in first place. We weren't any good, truthfully, but we were good enough to eke out 4 or 5 wins. We were 5-2 or 5-3. We were in first place. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. I thought I was playing really good football, and I was, and I had like a 70, 80 quarterback rating, which statistically stinks. And then I get released, and I go down to Dallas, and I'm playing with the defending Super Bowl champs with a loaded, talented team of young players. And I actually did not play that good of football, but the team was so loaded that I had like a quarterback rating of like 110 because, again, you hear you and me talk about this on the air and off the air a lot, is us quarterbacks who are victims or beneficiaries of the people around us. And again, when you have good talent and good stuff around you, you're going to play better. And sometimes when you don't, you have to be a little more resourceful, a little more creative. And I've been blessed to be able to have some gifts on both sides of that.
What was the Super Bowl experience like for you in Dallas? That had to be, and there was a stretch of the season where you were a big part of what was going on there.
Well, for the basis of this show, to have been 0-3 in AFC Championship games, to get the awesome opportunity to get a 4th mulligan and play in the NFC Championship game against the awesome San Francisco 49ers, and to great Ronnie Lott, and finally get a win against that awesome man, and he didn't pick off one of my passes for one of the few times. He's one of the few guys that got me most of the time. So to get that monkey off my chest, to get the opportunity to win an NFC Championship game, to be in a Super Bowl, to get this ring, at the time it meant a lot to me, and now as I get older, it means that much more to me. To definitely not to be one of the most athletic guys to play the position, to play in the game, but yet to end up with a Super Bowl championship ring and then with a national championship ring, I'm just so blessed.
Not many have done that. Select company. You go to Miami as a backup to Dan Marino to wrap up your career. What was that like for you?
It was a different point in the life because I knew then that, again, you're hitting 10, 11 years. You start really adding up on the broken bones, the surgeries. The diminishing skills is more accurate than not. So that part of me enjoyed it because I was coming to terms with who I was, you know, and I'm really proud of what I've accomplished. And at that point, you still want to do more because there still is nothing like playing football. It beats the heck out of maturity and growing up. But, you know, I started having kids. I was married. My family, they had situations going on there. I wanted to be able to be here in my mid-50s and be somewhat in good shape. You know, I didn't expect that I'd, you know, be the doctor or the holistic medicine guy taking care of myself. I figured there'd be others that would have figured it out.
Right.
But, you know, the ability to have played with my kids, to have been able to be somewhat healthy, that was something that was somewhat cognizant in my mind.
If I had a magic wand and I could wave it and you'd be 21 again and could go do the whole movie over again, would you do it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How would it be different the second time for you?
You know, people, I'm not one to really over want to change things.
Yeah.
You know, what happened, and I believe it happened for a reason, and I'm trying to learn from it and make the best out of it. You know, and I overanalyze or wish something else would have happened. I tend to go down just a negative path. You know, what's happening, and let's make the most of it and see what spirituality has in store for us.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I want to touch on what you're doing now because I'm fascinated by it. Your personal health has gone through some ebbs and flows, but just from a personal standpoint, knowing you for the last couple of years as I have, you've never looked better. What are you up to these days? What's the secret, my friend?
Well, if we had more than a couple-hour shows, we got so many good stories, and I'm not trying to say this to pitch or to make a sales pitch. I started this holistic wellness, this journey, really towards self-preservation for me and my family and friends to feel good. So many of my brothers, my older brothers that have played in the league, the pre-1993 4,100 guys that really started the foundation of our leagues. The pain and suffering, the surgeries, the things they're going through, it's really incredibly tragic. And you know, I don't need pity, and I'm not saying this to self-pity or to glorify anything, but you know, 30-some surgeries, 70-some broken bones, and again, I'm not counting the little things like fingers and toes. Those type things add up to you. And you know, here's a guy, a few years ago, if I was sitting here with you, my blood pressure is 160 over 120. I probably was on 4 or 5 high blood pressure pills, 3 or 4 cholesterol pills. Athletes, ex-athletes, we live on anti-inflammation pills. You know, that's 10 to 12 pills right there. And Jay, I haven't even got to the surgeries with pain medication and sleeping medication. And you're still not sleeping, and the stuff still hurts, and you still have high blood pressure, cholesterol, and inflammation in your joints. Yet you're a good patient, and you're taking all of that stuff. I didn't feel, at least for me, I wasn't at all getting better. I'm not picking on any of the doctors. We have great medicine here. It just wasn't working for me. So for me now to use food as my medicine, megadose vitamins, and the reduction and staying away from as many of the pills as possible, and I'm a big believer in the CBD with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's been life-changing for me.
You look great. I know you tell me you feel great, and I believe you because you carry it with you well. And I'm glad to see that you're in such a good place. I really am.
Well, I'm still not as fashionable as you, young man, but thank you, sir.
I don't know. You're looking pretty good, Bernie. I know I speak for everybody in Browns Nation when I say a heartfelt thank you for all of the great memories and all of the wins and even the lows. It was a hell of a journey, and I know I speak for Browns fans when I say thank you. We've enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. There were more highs than lows, and go Browns.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you again for joining us for Club 46, driven by Bridgestone. We're here all season long talking to all-time great Cleveland Browns. We'll see you again soon.